and welcome to Week 10 of the NFL season and the Turnover NFL podcast. I'm Allie Kasprzyk, always alongside Kelvin Reisenfeld.
Oh, guess who's back? It's us. It's us.
Another great week of NFL action. We got another great week of the show. We have a special guest at the end, the first one of the year. We're going to get right into it. So last week, we did a segment which was Pretender or Contender, which basically, in the current format, what teams were going to be on the brink, what teams were going to make it, so on and so forth. It was just announced that if any games were to get canceled, they'd expand the playoff another team. So there'd be 8 teams from each conference. Half the league is going to get in. So we're going to do a dark horse, someone who is even more on the outside, someone we think could slip in, someone could heat up the second half and get in basically 8-8, maybe 7-9, squeeze in with that last playoff spot. We're going to get started right away. Kelvin's is the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes, sir. The Vikings coming off of 2 back-to-back wins this week. I think they're way too good to be a 3-5 team right now. Against the Lions, Dalvin Cook had 206 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the previous week against the Packers, he had 163 yards with 3 touchdowns. He's healthy. He's back. The offensive line looks like it's clicking. I think that their schedule coming up, they could easily go 9-7. They got the Bears, which is a winnable game, Cowboys, Panthers, and then the Jags. The difficult games that they have are the Buccaneers and the Saints. And I think if they win the games they're supposed to, I don't see a reason why this team wouldn't go 8-8, 9-7. I think that they have a good chance to maybe squeeze into the Bears or overstep the Bears in that division.
Yeah, and maybe squeeze into that spot.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins obviously is still a big question mark for the Vikings, especially headed into the postseason if they get there. But that's my take. I don't know. I'm glad they're doing the 8 teams because that'll hopefully bust
That's
out.
only if games get canceled due to COVID, though.
Right.
But just barring everything, it kind of seems like at least a game or so will get canceled and they'll move to that 8-team format. These are dark horses, it's kind of a reach, but let's go for it. Speaking of reaches, the Detroit Lions.
Oh, no.
Now, let me tell you why I think they're going to make the playoffs. And it was a friend that said, because I was trying to think of my dark horse, and it was a friend that said, why don't you do the Lions? I said, no, that's ridiculous. And then I looked at their schedule, and then I saw hope is what I saw. They have to do exactly the opposite of what they are now. They're 3-5. They have to go 5-3. Their strength of schedule is 18th in the league. That's most difficult. They have tough games against Green Bay, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, and Chicago. And then their other 4 games are against Washington, Houston, Carolina, and Minnesota. Their 2 games I put as must-wins are Chicago and Minnesota. They have to win 2 of their must-wins. And if they were to do that, that would make them 4-4, I believe, at that last bit. And that would put them at 7-9. If they can steal one, great. If they can sweep all the games they should win, great. That puts them at 9-7, or 8-8, and then basically from there, they're 2 games out of the playoff spot right now with 8 games to go in the season. They are a bit of a dumpster fire. I won't lie. Matt Patricia has had at least 4 or 5 plays that have been noticed lately where they have 10 players on the defensive side. Dalvin Cook ran a 70-yard dive up the middle for a touchdown, and it was stated that they were missing a safety on that side.
Yeah.
So they have a lot to figure out. I think it starts this week against Washington, and then I believe they go to Houston and then Carolina, and then they have their tough 3-game stretch of Green Bay, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, Chicago. That's their 4th game, and then Minnesota.
Right.
So they could win the next 3, or at least 2 of the next 3, and at least be 500 and makes things interesting.
I love that you got a lot of hope. I love the ambition.
It's called a dark horse.
Right, fair enough. They did lose, like when you said a couple weeks ago that they were going to win 3 of the next 4 games. They have now lost 2 of those games.
That was before Galladay got hurt.
Okay, all right. Well,
Galladay's too important.
Okay.
Galladay's too important.
The Lions, man.
It's a dark horse. It's a dark horse.
You got too much heart.
Yeah, I know. Next up, we're going on to the predictions part. Kelvin and I both went 10-4 last week, the first time we've ever tied. That puts me at 91-42 and Kelvin at 88-45. He has 3 games back still. Close.
I mean, I'm right there, man. I would love for you to stop guessing games, right? That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I've got some bold takes this week, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah, keep taking them.
Start off, we got the Colts and the Titans. The Titans are favored by 2. Why don't you kick us off?
Looking at this game, the Titans, I think, are going to win this game pretty soundly. I think that the Colts are, like we said last week, they're pretenders. I don't think that their defense is solid. I don't believe in Phillip Rivers in this offense, though. They have too many running back situations they got to figure out. Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines. Who's the third guy I can't think of right now?
I can't even.
I don't know. Oh, Adrian Peterson. No, he's on the Lions. But they're going to win this game. I don't think the Colts are going to be able to withstand Derrick Henry in that offense.
Yeah, right as I started saying that the Indianapolis Colts were starting to click on offense as they dismantled the Lions, they put up 10 points against the Ravens, including 3 points in the last 3 quarters to score a touchdown in the first, no touchdowns after that. The Titans beat the Bears by a touchdown. The D held the Bears to 2-15 on third down. The Titans had been struggling on third down this season, so that's good to see. And the Titans also only gave up 281 yards, not the Titans. The Colts gave up 281 yards to the Ravens. So that's something not to take lightly because the Ravens are averaging well over 150 rushing yards a game. But with that being said, I'm also taking the Titans. It's tough to take the Colts over the Titans after their last performance.
Especially on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
At home in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So.
Next we have the Browns in Houston. Now, this is an interesting game. The Browns are coming off of a bye. Here's an interesting stat. In their losses, they've scored less than 7, and in every single one of their wins, they've scored more than 30.
Who's that, the Browns?
Browns.
Wow, that's not surprising.
Yeah, when they lose, they lose. The Texans won last week against the Jags. They won by 2. They gave up 304 passing yards to 6th-rounder Jake Luton.
Who?
Yeah. And I'm taking the Browns in this one. Browns are favored by 3. I'd take them by the spread.
Yeah, I would also take the Browns in this game. I don't know about the spread. I'd probably stay away from that, but I think that they have I could see them being the Browns and also giving up this game. This would be one that everybody thinks the Browns are going to win, and then somehow Texans are just going to come out and win the game. However, I would still take the Browns, and it pains me to say that, but I'm going to have to take them over the Texans. The Texans' offense is not that good. They're in shambles. I don't think that they're going to be able to withstand the pressure that Myles Garrett and that D-line is going to be able to give them.
A big reason why the Browns are in a playoff spot is because they've beaten the teams they're supposed to this year.
Yeah.
Teams they're not supposed to, they lose to,
right.
But they've beaten the teams they're supposed to, so this looks like another game they could win. Next, we have the Washington football team and the Detroit Lions. As previously stated, this shouldn't be a must-win for the Lions, but here it is, a must-win against a team with 2 wins. The Lions did not look good last week at all, and what the sad thing is, the Lions lost by 3 scores, but they really could have won. They had 2 blocked punts back-to-back drives. They had 2 drives inside the 10 where Stafford threw interception. Stafford wasn't Stafford last week. Kenny Golladay was out. Their defense was terrible to start, gave up obviously well over 200 yards to Dalvin Cook from scrimmage. And the sad thing is they could have won. With all that being said, they still choked. And that's what pains me the most is that with all of that against them, they were still very much in the game. And they had a lot going for them, and they lost by 3 scores. So you can look at it either way, and it's terrible. Washington, meanwhile, is coming off a loss to New York. I personally think that this Lions team is more talented than the Washington team. I think a big thing to watch for, though, is this Washington line versus the defensive line versus the Lions offensive line. Stafford's going to be back. He got hit hard. He didn't have a concussion or anything. If he's getting hit, the Lions will lose this game. But I'm giving it to the Lions.
Okay.
I think they'll be able to protect
So
it.
this is kind of a game, whoever puts more pressure on the quarterback is going to win the game?
Yeah. Also, shout out to Alex Smith last week throwing over 300 yards coming in for Kyle Allen after Kyle Allen broke his leg.
Yeah. That was bad. I did not like watching that.
No.
However, I'll agree. I'll take the Lions too. Did you get the spread on this one?
No, it wasn't up when I looked.
I guess I'll take the Lions just because Washington's terrible, and I don't think the Lions are as bad as they are. I think this is a game of who's worse, and I think that the Washington football team's bottom of the league, probably next to the Cowboys right now.
And the Jets.
Yeah.
If I were to guess the spread, I'd say 1.5 to the Lions.
Yeah. I would take that at home.
Yeah. Next, we have the Bucs versus the Panthers.
Now, this is interesting because the Buccaneers got absolutely steamrolled last week.
Bucs are favored by 4.5.
Yeah. I don't know if I would take them on the spread either. It's in Carolina. But the Panthers held their own against the Chiefs last week. I believe that game was 30-33. It ended up being with a little late of a fourth quarter run by the Panthers too. So that kind of shows that they're a resilient team, especially against the number 1 team in the league. The Buccaneers, obviously, like I said, they came off a bad loss last week. They couldn't get anything going against the Saints, who looked like world beaters, by the way. I think the Buccaneers are too talented to lose back-to-back games. They're going to still be fighting for that top spot in the division. I'm taking the Bucs.
I'm also going to be taking the Bucs. However, last week, Teddy Bridgewater had 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a rushing touchdown against a Chiefs team that has been known to shut down teams this year, shut down quarterbacks, shut down offensive weapons. Christian McCaffrey was back for a game. It looks like he's going to be out even longer after another shoulder injury. That's a shame. He had a great game as well. Tom Brady last week had 209 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I'll talk more about that Saints team in a bit, but the Bucs were just put in their place a bit.
Yeah, they were, because everybody, I feel like even we were talking up the Bucs and how this team was the team to look like they were going to be the ones to beat in the NFC, and the Saints just looked incredible.
They looked like everything that the Bucs weren't.
Yeah. However, I will say that the Bucs, I think I've said this since the beginning of the season, this team is going to get better and better each week, every week that they're playing. They just got Antonio Brown, another big offensive threat for them. They do look like he was playing. I looked like over 75% of the snaps on offense, and they were throwing in the ball too. I think that if they're going up against a defense that's not maybe pressuring Brady as much, because the Saints were pressuring him all game. The Panthers don't hit as hard as the Saints. I'm still taking the Buccaneers. I think as the season goes on, we're really going to see this team bloom.
Next, we have the Eagles and the Giants. Eagles are favored by 3.5. The Giants just beat Washington. Jones threw for less than 250, and their leading rusher, who was Gallman, ran for 68.
Wayne Gallman.
Yeah. Philadelphia's coming off of a bye. They're getting healthier each week, which is a positive sign for them. Alshon Jeffrey is questionable this week. He has not played a snap this year. He didn't practice at all last week, but he should be practicing this week. He's going to be questionable. Whether he's in or not, their receiving core is getting healthier. I'm taking the Eagles. Eagles by 3.5. I'll take them by that too. I'm saying they're getting healthier, but I'm saying they're an 8-8 team at full roster maybe.
Yeah.
They're probably a 7-9 team when they're fully healthy. I'm taking the Eagles in this one.
Yeah, this is a bold take for me, but I'm taking the Giants.
You like the Giants?
Yeah, I don't like the Giants. I just hate the Eagles because they're so bad and they're winning their conference. Realistically, if the Giants win this game, they are right there for winning the division.
Yeah, this is as hot of a division game as
which
you
is
can get.
terrible because I think both these teams combined have 5 wins, and that's miserable. And especially for a game that's going to be competing for the NFC East title. And I'm not really too concerned about this game other than the fact that I just want to see the Eagles lose maybe to make that conference division a little bit more interesting.
If the Giants win, are they first?
I believe so because the Eagles have a tie on their record. So they would be 3-7 and the Eagles would be 3-5-1.
No, the Eagles would be first.
Yeah, the Eagles would still be up.
By half,
Yeah.
Man, that's wild. 3-7 and they'd be in second.
Right.
That's
terrible.
Wild. Now we have the Packers and the Jaguars. Packers are favored by 14.
There's not much to say here, is there?
No.
I would take the Packers by 1 million. I'll take
Yeah.
one out of your book.
I was about to say, does that say that in your notes?
Does it say it in yours?
No, actually, it says the Packers spanked the 49ers last week. Devontae Adams has 422 yards in his last 3 games to go with 6 touchdowns. Jags are coming off of a loss to a bad Houston team. Luton in his first start had 300 yards. That's the first bright spot since probably week 1 outside of Robinson, who was probably having the best for rookie year to an undrafted running back in the history of the NFL. But aside from that, Packers by 14, I'd take them by 21. I'd take them by 1 million.
How about Devontae Adams, though? You think right now he's the best receiver in the league?
I mean, it's tough to argue that.
Like
His
right
connection,
now,
yeah.
I would put him up there. I mean, I don't know, maybe against DeAndre Hopkins
I was
in like
gonna
a
think- I was
one-on-one
thinking D-Hop.
scenario. D-Hop's still the king in my opinion, but the past couple weeks, Devontae Adams been there.
Ridiculous, 422 yards.
Yeah.
Now we have the Dolphins and the Chargers. Now the Dolphins just beat the Cardinals. This was a game last week where we were happy that the Dolphins were 4-3. We're saying, oh, they've got a tough-ish schedule coming up, starting with the Cardinals. It's kind of a who are you schedule, and the Dolphins went out, beat the Cardinals, 2 ahead over 280 total yards. He had 0 turnovers. With possibly the extended playoff, if the playoffs were to start today, the Dolphins are in over the Browns and the Colts based on strength of schedule, strength of wins. The extended playoff, the Dolphins are in even more so. So that's something to note. Dolphins are favored by 3. Chargers last week lost a heartbreaking
Heartbreaker
way.
again.
Yeah, again.
Again.
Last second touchdown was overruled. I'm taking the Dolphins. This one I'd take them by the spread too. The way Tua played, the way that team's kind of starting to click.
I'll just give you their past 4 games on the Dolphins. They lost, past 5. The most recent loss was against the Seahawks, and it was 23-31. That's not a bad loss. Then they go on and beat the 49ers 43-17. They shut out the Jets 24-0. They beat their Rams 28-17, and they beat the Cardinals by a field goal. Coming up on their schedule, they got the Chargers, Broncos, and the Jets and the Bengals.
If I heard that right, they're on a 4-game win streak.
Right now.
And they have a schedule that is incredibly favorable.
Yes. And they got 4 games that they should win the next 4. They'll lose to the Chiefs, beat the Patriots. The Raiders game's up in the air, and then the Bills, will see what happens. So, I mean, I don't see why this team. I called them a pretender last week.
We both did.
Yeah.
We both said, let's wait and see.
I'm already wanting to change that because if they're able to win, at least 3 of the next 4 games they're supposed to, I don't see why they wouldn't be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the Dolphins.
Now we have the Broncos and the Raiders. Raiders are favored by 5.5.
A lot of points at home, but the Raiders they're heating up. I think they're right there with the Dolphins. They're 5-3 right now. They're chipping at the Chiefs as much as they can. They're 2 games behind them. They're going to be a playoff team. I'm taking the Raiders.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Raiders are kind of starting to solidify themselves as a wild card team this year. They beat the Chargers last week. The offense wasn't great, but their defense stepped up. That's back-to-back weeks where they had to. Last week they beat the Browns 16-6. D-Car threw only 165 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jacobs ran less than 70 yards. He had a touchdown. He was also very questionable for that game with an illness.
That was actually the Chargers game. That was a Chargers game. They won.
What?
Last week.
Yeah, I meant the week before that they won 16-6.
Oh, yeah.
The Broncos lost to the Falcons. Drew Lock threw for 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. I still like Drew Lock. Not many people do for whatever reason, but I like Drew Lock. He ran the ball the second most on their team. They go out, they sign Melvin Gordon. They already have Phillip Lindsay, who's a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher. They signed Melvin Gordon, and Phillip Lindsay ran the ball 8 times. Melvin Gordon ran it 6. Drew Lock ran it 7. Wow. I don't know what's going on in Denver. They have...
How many rushing yards total do they have, do you know?
Not many.
Not many, it can't be.
Not many. I don't know what's going on in Denver. They have 2 talented running backs, 2 running backs that can run well over 1,000 yards, and both of them are going to be well under because of the way they're utilizing them. I'm taking the Raiders in this game by 5.5. It's a bit of a bold stretch because the Raiders just play close games because they're just a gritty team. But
they could win by a touchdown.
I could very much believe it, but I just don't know what's going on with Denver. They were a team that once they kind of started getting healthy, I thought might compete for a wild card spot, but I seriously think they're not utilizing their run game well. Their defense slipped up. I mean, the Falcons have a very good offense.
The Broncos defense is still beat up too.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were healthy, I think this is a completely different team, but that's not the case.
Even just Von Miller.
Right.
But yeah.
Big linebacker. I mean, you have him in the middle of the field, stuffs everything up, stop the run, maybe able to put more pressure on the quarterback. But I think the Broncos, they just haven't brought a whole lot to the table. They have a really talented wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy. Drew Lock's good. I think he's going to take a couple of years for him to really start taking those steps up. But I think that the Broncos are going to lose this game for sure.
Yeah. I'm not even questioning it. This one's actually very interesting.
This is a great game.
It's the Seahawks and the Rams, and the Rams are favored by 1.5.
That doesn't surprise me. I'm definitely taking the Seahawks, though. I'm going to bet on them for sure. I think that last week's loss against the Bills was really showing the Seahawks defense their true colors. They just had their way with him. Josh Allen was a world beater that day. I think he came off a loss of his grandmother, too, so shout out to him for that and that family. But the Rams' offense is very talented as well, so this is going to be a really high-scoring game. And I think that this is going to be a really good game to watch. It's at 4:25. I'm definitely going to be tuning into it with the Bengals and Steelers game on as well. But I'm taking the Seahawks.
This game is, and I said it before, the Rams seem like anytime they're about to be a team that we can talk about being the class, they choose to lose a game like this. And maybe it's because of Jared Goff. Maybe it's because, for whatever reason, their defense slips up a little bit. That's pretty rare, though. Maybe it's because their running game is hurt but getting healthier now. This is a game where they need to win, and I'm going to take the Rams for that reason. I think this will be a both team score of 30-plus points. I think that the Rams need this more than the Seahawks because the Seahawks have proven who they can be. So even if the Seahawks were to lose this game, I would have no fear for them at all. I'm taking the Rams for that reason. Seahawks lost to the Bills last week by 2 scores. Russell Wilson still threw for 390 yards, but he had 2 interceptions and a fumble. DJ Dallas only ran for 31 yards.
Yeah.
Right now, Carlos Hyde is questionable. Right now, Chris Carson is questionable. That's big.
Yeah.
If either of them can go, it's a completely different team. But for now, it's not. Metcalf had another 100-yard performance. What a freaking guy that is. That guy is ridiculous. But the Rams last played, they lost to Miami. So this is a big prove-it game for the Rams. Who are you going to be? Are you going to really put a push for the playoffs? Are you actually going to compete in the playoffs? That's what this Rams team needs to prove.
They're coming off a bye week, right, too?
Yep.
So they're going to be pretty rested. I just think Pete Carroll's going to have this defense fired up. I think after being exposed like that last week, I just don't see them coming out as flat as they did against the Bills.
I agree with that. And is Jared Goff going to be able to produce?
That's a big question mark.
Yeah.
Against that defense, he should. But we'll see. I think the Seahawks are last in the league right now in points given up and total yards given up per game.
Cowboys most points given up.
Oh, okay.
But Seahawks are
right there.
The Steelers and the Bengals. The Steelers are favored by 8.5.
Dude, this game is going to be a classic Bengals-Steelers game, as always. However, I believe that the Steelers have 5 players listed on the COVID list. Big Ben's coming off of an injury last week. This game's in Pittsburgh, and the Steelers are coming off of a very questionable performance against the Cowboys. And subsequently, the Bengals are coming off a win. I'm taking the Bengals over the Steelers by field goal. I don't even know why. Joe Burrow's going to get hit every play. Every play. He is going to be running for his life. TJ Watt is going to be a predator, and it's not going to be fun. Go Bengals.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was thinking of taking the Bengals until you said Bengals, and now I'm taking the Steelers. The Steelers are coming off back-to-back games where they probably should have lost statistically. One of them was to Garrett Gilbert's Cowboys.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The Bengals are coming off of a bye after beating Tennessee. Great win by them. I think the Steelers team is too good. I was going to try and make a bold take by taking the Bengals, but I'm not going to. I think Big Ben's going to be fine this weekend. He's going to be in the same shoes as Stafford was. He has to pass a few negative COVID tests after coming in contact with someone, and I think he will. And with that being said, the Steelers team has too much talent top to bottom.
Fun fact, too, I think every time I've taken the Bengals on the show, they lose that week. And I think the times that I haven't, they have won. So, who day? Let's go. Let's see what happens.
There's a first time for everything.
There's a first for everything, just like maybe the first Steelers loss. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Now we have the Saints and the 49ers. Saints are favored by 9.5. The Saints put on a show last week. Jameis Winston got to play against the Bucs. He ate a W after the game.
Yeah.
The Saints have been getting healthier all year. This is something we have been saying, that once they get healthy, they'll make a push in the second half of the season. However, the second half of the season, they're entering 6-2. We were thinking they might be 4-4, 5-3, and then they'd have to, push to assert their dominance. No, they're already dominant with what they've got. Their defense is finally getting healthy. They give up 3 points to a team that has weapons all over the place.
They're on top of the NFC South.
Yeah. Michael Thomas is back. I don't even know if he played 50% of the snaps. He wasn't on the field too often, but when he was, it just opens up time for other receivers, other players on the field. It gives everybody perspective. Alvin Kamara didn't even have a great game. I believe he had 40 yards.
Really quiet.
Doesn't matter, because that team, once they get Michael Thomas back and all their weapons, it opens up time for everybody. Kamara wasn't even needed, and they put up over 30 points and won by over 30 points. I honestly thought they were going to shut out the Bucs.
Yeah, for a minute there, yeah.
I hoped they would. So I'm taking the Saints in this one by 9.5. If they play anything remote to last week, it'll be by over 14. So I'm taking the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the Saints too. It just kind of shows the character of Sean Payton and what he's doing with this team, because he's got all these weapons. He goes up against a team with Bruce Arians and the Bucs and just dominates without even really needing to utilize the superstars. I think that's probably because they knew the defense was going to focus their attention on those big superstars with Michael Thomas being back. However, Emmanuel Sanders had a good game. Callaway had a couple touchdowns. They just were world beaters. Their defense looked phenomenal. And was it Cam Jordan? Is that
Yep.
Yeah, Cameron Jordan on the defensive lines, back and healthy. Malcolm Jenkins is a stud, as well as
Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, Marshawn Lattimore holding Mike Evans to two targets, 0 receptions
In the last 3 games.
So I'm taking the Saints. The 49ers are in shambles too.
Yeah, they're hurt all over the
I don't
place.
think we even mentioned them.
No. Yeah, I know. We didn't even talk about the 49ers. They're hurt. They're 4-5. If they're able to flirt with 500 with this extended playoff potentially coming, and they start getting healthier, who knows?
Who knows? It's just tough if they caught the injury bug the way that they did.
Raheem Mostert is eligible to come off the IR this week. However, there's talks that they're going to withstand it because they have a bye week next week, and
It's going to give them
just play it
extra time.
safe. Yeah, which I wouldn't blame them, especially against the Saints team, especially with the way he would need to be used against the Saints team. He would be getting hit a lot. He would be coming from playing nothing for 3 weeks to playing 75-80% of the snaps and getting the ball a lot.
Right.
Now we have the Ravens and the Patriots. Ravens are favored by 7.5.
God, the Patriots are they're just looking terrible.
Scary bad.
Like, scary bad. I don't know what it is, man, but they come off a 3-point win against the Jets on a Monday night game. That is not Bill Belichick-like. That is not like the Patriots. However, they're going through their rebuild. The Ravens' offense has been struggling, so that's why the only reason why I could see the Patriots kind of staying in this game a little bit, especially on a Sunday night game in New England. So I'm still taking the Ravens. I don't know if I would take them by the spread, though. I think that this could be a little bit of a questionable matchup for the Ravens' offense, but I think they're still going to win.
Yeah, I'm taking the Ravens, and I'm taking them by a lot. I think this Patriots team was kind of in the battle for Justin Fields last week with Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence with the Jets, and Joe Flacco said, at first he said, we might win a game this year, and then in the fourth quarter he said, you know what, nah. I'll give you the ball, you guys can go score. And that's what my vibe was with that game. The Jets are just so bad. They have had 2 games this year where everything goes their way and they lose. The other one was to the Broncos, if you remember that.
Yeah.
They are terrible. They're going 0-16. I'm saying it week in and week out, speak it into existence. The Patriots really should have lost that game, taking the Ravens probably by 2 scores. They're going to run the ball all over this defense.
True. I'd see that.
Now we have the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Vikings
Monday Night Football.
3. Yeah, this is actually a decent game.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one to watch. I'm glad it's actually a solid Monday night matchup. I'm taking the Vikings because if they're able to establish their run game with Dalvin Cook, they're a dangerous team. And they're too good right now to be 3-5. This is a division game. The Bears are coming off a bad loss last week to the Titans, I believe. And Kirk Cousins, like I said, it's gonna rely on his shoulder to see how he performs. If he can perform well, then they will win this game. If he don't, it'll be on his head.
This is gonna be the first time I've ever said this, but I'm taking the Bears. I personally think that the Vikings shouldn't be 3-5, but they are. And I think this Bears defense is going to slow down Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's had over 450 yards in the last 2 games all purpose, which is a ridiculous stat.
5 touchdowns, I think.
Just ridiculous. I think the Bears, if there's ever a team to slow them down, it's going to be this Chicago Bears team outside of maybe the Rams, outside of maybe Tampa Bay. You mentioned the Bears to slow down a playmaker. Kirk Cousins, even though the Lions tried to make him look like prime Peyton Manning last week, he's not. So I'm giving this one to Chicago, completely different team than the Lions that they played last week. Minnesota's in for a run for their money. This is a big-time game, though, for Minnesota. They win this game. They're 1 game out of 500. They're suddenly back in the wild card race. Chicago, they're back-to-back losses. They lose this game.
They're in trouble.
They're in trouble. I had personally predicted that the Chicago Bears at the 500 point of the season, halfway through the season, they were going to go 3-5. They started 0-2. They have to go 500 They have to go 500 the rest of the year just to be 500 on the season.
Yeah. And that's scary for them because their offense is terrible. Mm-hmm. They've struggled to get yards. They've struggled to be performing in the red zone all season long, and you don't win football games like that.
Yeah.
Your defense can only do so much.
So I'm taking the Bears. I think this is more of a must-win for the Bears than the Vikings.
I like the take. I think it's a good one.
Next up, we have our game of the week: Buffalo Bills versus the Arizona Cardinals with Allie Kasprzyk of the women's lacrosse team. She's a senior here from Buffalo, New York, and a diehard fan at that. So, Allie, why don't you tell us about the Buffalo Bills, what you think of their season, what you think of last week?
All right, well, the Buffalo Bills are obviously coming off a big win against the Seahawks. Sorry to throw off your predictions, but you guys should honestly know better by now.
Oh, my goodness.
Early season Josh Allen is back, I would say. He went 31 for 38, threw for 415 yards, 4 total touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 rushing. And that was after the death of his grandmother the night before, and I think that says a lot about a quarterback and a player in general to come out, play like that, lead a team to a good win. The Bills' defense also showed up, which is something we haven't seen in every game. They had 4 forced turnovers, they had 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and I just think the Bills looked good from both ends against the Seahawks. They beat a good team, so for everyone that's out there saying the Bills haven't beat a good team yet, there you go. I think this game against the Cardinals comes down to two things that we've seen inconsistency with the whole season, whether Josh Allen plays the way he can and whether the defense shows up. So I think that since the defense played so well against the Seahawks, I think that they can easily put pressure on Kyler Murray. And also, if Josh Allen can keep his role going again, I think that with all the tools that he has, with all his receivers, I mean, Stephon Diggs is leading the league right now in receiving yards, so I think that this is a game that the Bills could run away with easily.
Nice. I like that. I will agree with her on the defensive side of things. Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer and Tre'Davious White had a fantastic game last week. Big shout out to them holding in one of the most firepower offenses in the league with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to take the Bills as well over the Cardinals. I think that if they're able to, conduct that defense like they did last week, I don't think that the Cardinals are going to outscore the Seahawks against the Bills. And I think that the Cardinals' defense is definitely better than the Seahawks. Patrick Patterson's a pretty good defensive back for them. So I think we'll see what happens. But I'm all in on Josh Allen right now. He really impressed me last week, and he looked great.
I'll agree with you on the Josh Allen take. I believe last week we had said it's been a few weeks since Josh Allen stepped up. And he stepped up in a big way last week. He stepped up to the plate going against Russell Wilson. That is never an easy opponent, and he outdueled him. Plain and simple. Maybe it was more the team around him outdueled Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson is that dude. But Josh Allen stepped up big. I think this game reeks of a Cardinals win just because they're coming off of a loss. But I'm still taking the Bills. I'm a bit hesitant. The Cardinals are a very good team that are coming off of a bad loss.
No, I think you should do it. I think you should do it if you want to do it.
Yeah, I don't want to. That's why I said the Bills.
Oh, okay.
But thanks. I think the only reason is because earlier this season it was literally they're coming off of a loss to the Detroit Lions and they're playing the Seahawks, and it just felt weird just thinking that the Seahawks were going to beat this team that has all this talent, and then the Cardinals went out and win. However, the Bills after last week, they're thriving. If there's ever a time for the Bills to just beat two very good teams, it's right now.
Yeah. Allie, I got to ask you this. AFC champions, are they potential for that and going to the Super Bowl? What are they?
I mean, I said it last time. I always think the Bills are going to the Super Bowl, but this year I'm confident. I really think that this could be the year that the Bills make it back. I mean, if you look at the statistics, everything's lining up the same way as our last 4 Super Bowl runs, so maybe this time we'll get a win out of it.
How about that? I wish I could have that much enthusiasm for my team.
I wish I had that much positivity.
I think actually Allie's team is combined has more wins than both of our favorite teams right now.
Yeah.
So props to you. I hope the Bills win this game next week. I think they deserve it.
Yeah. That is all that we have for Week 10 of the NFL Turnover. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good week.
UFTV is your university and community TV station.